Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. We're on to the third hour of the conversation. We started at 6 a.m. We're here until 10 in the morning. We're live streaming the show on SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. We are also live on SpiceFM, and for the next 1 hour, we are live on KTN Home. We begin the hour with the proverb, City Muga.
You cannot steal a head of a goat from the butcher and put it in a sack, for the horns will stick out.
I'm telling you, this proverb was written by a butcher.
Meet the butcher.
Yes. Cannot steal a goat because the horns will be...
Head.
The
Not
head,
just the goat. Head.
the head of a goat and put it in a sack because the horns will stick out.
You know, the horns are a bit of an impediment. Remember the cases we were talking of some times back of individuals who masquerade as policemen.
Yeah.
And some have goats and sheep.
Yeah.
And they've covered it in some way. The horns tend to mess up that whole game. Don't you think so? Because you start wondering, afande hii mbuzi, hii ng'ombe, iko na pembe. Yes, so. But now, as with Proverbs, what does it mean?
Okay. Let's ask our guest what he understands of this proverb. His Excellency James Ongwae, the governor of Kisii County, joins us in the studio. Karibu sana to the Situation Room.
Asante sana, asante my sister and my two brothers, Eric, Munya and Nundu. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me here this morning.
We call that the hot seat, Governor. We would like to warm it up so that our guest can enjoy the Situation Room. So we'll be warming it up as we go. Let's just start that proverb. Do you relate to that proverb?
Can you repeat it again, that proverb? Because
Right. You cannot steal the head of a goat from the butcher and put it in a sack, for the horns will stick out. It's not saying you cannot steal the head. You can, just don't put it in a sack, because the horns will stick out.
Well, it depends on the type of sack you're actually putting it in. You would be assuming that you...
Right. Good opening, isn't it? Yes. Okay, carry on.
Yeah, it depends on the sack you're putting it in. If you put it in a sack that whose context, the way it was manufactured was poorly manufactured, then it will probably stick out. Yeah, but it has a broader meaning. And you know, Proverbs, the only problem with Proverbs is that you can ascribe various meanings to them.
Yes.
This particular one, I would rather stand out. I would rather not.
This one you will not.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's put the head of this goat in the gunia and see. The goat is Devolution. You are a two-term governor. You have served in Kisii County. First time the people of Kisii gave you this mandate, and then they felt that you've done a good job. They renewed your mandate. That time is coming to an end. But not just for Kisii County. Looking at devolution and how devolution has worked since the first governors came into office in 2013 up to now, as you're going into the devolution conference, we want to look at the scorecard of how devolution has performed. Many people would say it has had its ups, it has had its downs, it has had its challenges, it has had its wins. On a score of 1 to 10, from your personal perspective as Governor James Ongwae, how would you rate devolution in Kenya?
Thank you very much, Eric. First, even before I start rating devolution, I would have to look at the country called Kenya before devolution, because that then is what gives you the standing from where you're starting from. If you saw Kenya before devolution, and I'd worked in government for about 30 years before devolution, I used to work in the Office of the President and even was a PS in that office. You were seeing counties. They were not we were not calling them counties at that time.
We started with provinces.
They were provinces and districts, and you were seeing where the resources were actually not trickling down to them. But since then, since we came in, I think you've seen tremendous progress. Even the stopping of the people from coming to Nairobi, people are now looking for jobs at the local level. So on a score of 1 to 10, I would probably give the success on devolution, I would probably give it about 8. Yeah.
And what's the 2? Where do those 2 points go?
Well, it's because even in exams, even the best of those that are doing exams, you never get them getting 100%. I think you will find that the bulk of the people, even those exams you did yourself, my brother Eric, you find the bulk of us were actually oscillating around 50% or thereabouts. So those who got 80% are the ones who went to Alliance, they are the ones who went to Harvard, they are the ones who went to these high-level places. So 80% is a very good score.
So, Mheshimiwa, are you saying that the exams are set with the sole goal of ensuring that nobody gets 100%?
That is that question one would have to really think about it, because from time immemorial, we've never heard of anybody getting 100%.
Is it something to aspire to, though, Governor?
That is the aspiration for everybody. I mean, if you are going for an exam, you want to get 100%. That's the aspiration. And it should be the aspiration for this country that the subnational governments that we created, subnational idea that we created in order to increase service delivery and increase development at the local level, that ideally its implementation should be 100%. Yeah.
What are some of the things you think, or some of the challenges that have stood and perhaps continue to stand in the way of, complete devolution in this country? I mean, and even before you answer, I mean, I see so many things. I see counties and I see potential that has come to the surface that without devolution, in my opinion, would have been 100% impossible. That there are people in counties who've gone to school. There are people in other parts of the country who've now been able to access certain things that without this process would never have been able to see. What are some of the things that stop it from them getting to that place where you say it must continue?
I think in the first 6 months to 1 year, we were dealing with the whole broad issue of institutionalization. Because like me now, I'm first and second term governor, which means that I started off devolution. When I went in, there wasn't even an office. There were no institutional structures. There were no governance structures on the ground. We were the first term governor, so we didn't know what managing a subnational government meant. We had our own government that we were running, but there was no book that we were reading from. And there was no handover from anybody. So you could argue that the first 1 year was a year of institutionalization. I think all that we passed. And in the first 1 year, the most crazy thing is that there was absolutely no problem in resourcing county governments. But subsequently, after that, the resourcing for county governments became a problem. And I'll tell you, national government the national ministries receive their funds on a quarterly basis, which means that if you are planning for development, if you probably have a contractor out there who is working, you can actually be able to organize and pay that contractor. You can plan very well to do that. But county governments receive their money on a monthly basis, which means that the entire amount of your budget is divided in such a manner that you're given your quantum on a monthly basis. The only problem that happens is that the money comes late. So by the end of the financial year, you actually find that they are giving you the final 2 months on the 30th of June. They are giving you the final 2 months. So if they are giving you like this particular year, the final 3 months had not come in. So the final 3 months came the last 10 days or thereabouts. And that's why you saw us as I happen to be the vice chair of the Council of Governors. That's why you saw us fighting for extension of time in order for counties to actually absorb those resources. But even with that extension of time, it's very difficult because government money is not like your money in the pocket. There are procedures in which that you have to follow in order to pay for services because of transparency and accountability. I mean, your own money, you probably can just go there and just remove. But government money, you must account for it.
Yeah.
So the second problem that I'm seeing is the problem of resources, the problem of release of the resources. The third problem that I can talk about is that we've now into 10 years of devolution, but there are still certain functions that are still with national government that ideally should have gone to national government, which are still performed by national government. The fourth issue is that if you're looking at all the county governments, we're getting about 350 billion shillings per annum. And then you have a budget which is over 2 trillion shillings. So you need to ask yourselves, and you people are journalists, you need to ask yourselves where actually the 1.7 or 1.8 trillion, where that money goes. If that money is in the center, what is it doing in the center? And yet this country, the entire country is actually devolved. Unless that is serving Nairobi and its environs, we do know that you can understand when they rationalize and indicate that some of that money is going into infrastructural programs that are national in nature and that transit counties like roads. But that quantum needs to be understood. What is it that is transiting counties? What is it that is actually being kept in ministries where probably the people in the ministries have never accepted the reality that we are in devolution?
Do you have an idea? Because I'm curious. Do you have an idea? Just asking now and trying to maybe investigate a little bit. Where does this actually go? If we're saying that, because I'm hearing you say then that there's a need for more funds to go to the counties to be able to get this work of running the country done. And then it appears as though there's some extra money floating about and we don't really know where it goes. Do you have any idea?
Your guess is as good as mine, but I will tell you that if you talk to people in those ministries, they will rationalize. They will tell you how they utilize those resources, but they can't utilize them in a vacuum. But they must utilize them in the counties. So that then becomes a job for all of us to find out that these things that they are doing from the center that ideally should be done by the counties, because that's what the people of Kenya said in 2010. In devolving government and in creating the subnational governments. We should accept that reality, those of us who are in the center.
You know, Bona Governor, I agree with you. And in fact, even before you came into the studio, we were talking about what we think about devolution. And I agree with you that devolution has transformed the country in many aspects, in terms of citizens' expectation, public participation, awareness of the citizen. But I get a sense throughout these years that those in the devolved units feel and treat themselves as the smaller brothers of those in the national unit. You came in 2013 at the same time as a new president was coming in. So you are a new governor in Kisii. There was a new president at the national level. You were 47 of you. There was one president at the national level. There's one national government. There's 47. There's a council of governors. But in everything that we hear is as if the national government operates as a big brother and you have accepted your role as small brothers. So when your money is not released on time, all you do is whine. When the budget is only allocated at 360 billion shillings, all you do is whine and say, we should be asking where the other 2.7 trillion shillings is going to. But the division of revenue is a conversation that happens in a forum where the Council of Governors sits. It's chaired by the Deputy President, and this is at the IBEC. So I ask myself, is it that there's a big brother, small brother mentality? Or what is the problem? Why are we where we are now?
Eric, I would tell you is probably also true that we have a big young brother mentality. But remember that the Constitution created an intermediate organization that was supposed to take care of devolution matters and also take care of ensuring that the counties are not shortchanged, we created a Senate.
Mm-hmm.
The Senate's role was mainly basically to entirely midwife devolution for this country and take charge of those issues that you're talking about. I'll give you an example. Last financial year, not this one which has ended, but the other financial year, we decided that the resourcing and so on and the amounts were actually not enough to run the counties. And if you recall, there was a push and pull, which meant that the counties actually ended up getting their money sometime in November.
Mm.
We do know that time is a thief because once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
And the financial year would not be rolled back just because you got your money late. So counties ended up getting their money around November. So what are we talking about here? We saying that you can fight this big brother, but if you have a treasury, that is a treasury that is supposed to serve two levels of government, but is a treasury that believes that it is there and exists, and its raison d'etre is just to take care of one level of government first and foremost, then it's the Kenyans now who are supposed to help us. Because let me give you an example. Ministries get their money yours faithfully on a quarterly basis. That is national government now. But counties don't. We are supposed to be serviced by the Treasury. It is servicing the two levels of government, but is giving preference to one level of government. You get governors who are coming in. We make noise about that, but sometimes noise also can't help you very much. You get into negotiations, you get into discussions and so on, because that noise is what has got the money sometime in November. So we are negotiating on some of these things, and sometimes I think as time is moving on, we are maturing. The devolution process is maturing. The first presidency that was part of the devolution process is getting out. We now going to get a new crop of leaders in 2022. I am suspecting that this situation is going to change drastically.
Let me ask this question, Bona Governor. Do we have legislation currently that would enforce, or rather force the hand of the Treasury to ensure that the monies that are due to the counties actually arrives at the time that it should? Meaning, you don't have to ask. It's clockwork, like with the ministries. Is there such a legislation?
So when it comes to disbursement of funds from the National Treasury, is there a law that mandates the National Treasury to disburse certain amounts of money within specific timelines?
There wasn't a law, but I am aware that I think the Senate is working on this. I think there must be a bill that is there. And this was also an issue that was properly covered under the BBI. If the BBI had been passed, it probably would have been a fait accompli because it is covered under the BBI. But I do know that Senate, I think I've got a bill or something like that that is supposed to come up. But again, one wonders whether if you have a system that is working, if you are looking at a country like the US, you don't see a straight constitution like the one that we've got here. You got practices, good practices.
You got traditions.
You got traditions. Do you really need a law to compel a public servant or compel a public organization from releasing something that is lawful?
Well, I mean, if you look at there's in some of in this one that you've spoken about, there is the expectation on historic behavior that somebody will do the right thing, right? Can we say the same thing exists here in Kenya? That there is the expectation that someone will do the right thing. You would say that is the expectation. The expectation is in the opposite.
You see, Your Excellency, you are a PS. One doesn't wake up and becomes a PS the following day. It's a long career in the civil service. So you're somebody who has worked with structures and you know how they function and you know what ought to be done. And then there's the element of the obligation, knowing that this has to be done because of this and this and this. So it's incumbent upon you to do so. Now, you've now entered politics. Do you think politicians think the same way?
The issue of funding is not a political issue. It's actually an issue for the executive. It's an issue for technocrat. It's a technocratic decision, and that is what worries me because as a country we've been independent for a very long time, and by now certain traditions and practices should have been cemented where we're doing the right thing in the public service.
Excellency, surely.
Yes.
You're telling me that government officials do not in any way pay any heed to what the executive, who are politicians, and that the whims of politicians don't actually influence some of these things? Is that what you're saying, Excellency?
I think they do, but also is incumbent among those the technocrats to actually give proper advice. Though I suspect that in the broader context of financing, it may well be that those in national government are giving priority to financing and paying off the debts for national government and ignoring those debts that actually belong to counties. Because the monies that they give us is actually to pay debts and for services offered. So this is an issue that, in my own opinion, you probably don't need to legislate if everybody was doing their work.
You create traditions
Yeah.
over time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, if I look back at what the Council of Governors has done by going to court, seeking interpretation with the Supreme Court on certain matters, that's how tradition is
We
then
actually
entrenched.
went to the Supreme Court on the same, and the Supreme Court came out very clearly about all those issues.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So, and that's how you push, that's how you make sure
Yeah.
that these things happen.
Yeah.
But also I want to come back to that organ that determines how much money goes to national government and how much money goes to the county governments. Because this is where the conversation happens even before the budget. That this is the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council, where the Council of Governors is there and it's chaired by the deputy head of the executive, the national executive, the others, the CRA and the rest sit in. When that conversation is happening, and let's say in this current financial year, you agreed that counties are going to get 410 billion shillings. What justification is there for arriving at a paltry 410 billion shillings in a 3 trillion shilling budget?
I think that is the conversation that we as Kenyans, and we have asked the Senate all those questions. But remember, even that 410, even whatever is actually agreed on by within the broader context of the IEBC, when it gets down to the parliamentary system, when it gets to the National Assembly, and then gets to the Senate, you again find that those resources, there is a push and pull, and some of those resources are actually reduced. So it's not as if those organs you are talking about are final. Because the biggest problem that again you would have is in the National Assembly, not mostly in the Senate, in the National Assembly. I have asked myself, the assemblers, the National Assemblers, those people are actually representing constituencies which occur in counties. And so I always ask myself, what in God's name really informs them? Because if I was one of them, I would probably fight for more resources to actually go to the counties. Because if those resources go to the counties, then they are going to develop the constituencies that I'm coming from. So I have never understood their motivation. Somebody needs to tell me what their motivation is. Because the biggest problem that we have with financing counties actually comes from the National Assembly.
From some quarters, it has been that the belief is then perhaps there is no this behavior then can point to that there is really no direct support for devolution. Would you agree with that? Because if one of the things that is supposed to be the fuel for this devolution engine is funding, and most times we hear about this, that you're getting the funding when it's too late, or that you're getting the funding when you already have debts or services have been offered. And if it is the thing that is going to help constituencies develop, for example, would you see it then as a direct non-support of devolution?
I would not say that is a complete non-support, but it's probably the model of the devolution system that we put in place. Because if you look at complete devolution, look at those countries that have complete devolution, that have look at the US, for instance, look at India. Those that have complete models of devolution, their systems where there is complete independence at the devolved level. They have states. Those states, it's much easier because then the national government doesn't play around. But you have a model of devolution here, which in a way I still thank it, and is a growing model, which is not complete decentralization. Because in the other models where you have those complete two levels of government, you have states, complete states that are occurring. You don't find this type of things that we are talking about here.
And then you also find that the governors have almost complete power.
Yeah,
if we're looking at the federal system.
The federal system, there is almost complete power.
They have real power.
They have real power,
Yes. You know why I keep bringing the political angle to this? Is because the very same things I've heard the Council of Governors talk about is the same thing that the judiciary talks about. Because the judiciary is always short of funds. You hear over 23.6 billion deficit, you hear of this. And the moment you hear funds, you immediately have to ensure, or rather you're more or less guaranteed that the functions of that particular unit are going to be hampered completely. Because in the absence of those funds, they can't function. In the absence of the funds, the county can't function. When the funds are delayed, as you've clearly told us, it makes it very difficult to plan or to do anything. Now, why do I bring in the political angle? It's because it's a discussion that has been the public domain, and we have even hindsight. We can go back into history and see that at the very time when counties were funded, the judiciary also was well funded. So are we saying that the function suddenly required less money, or are we saying that they didn't need the money? And the answer is no. They actually needed more. That's why I bring in the political angle.
I think what I would tell you, if you look at those two organizations, you look at the judiciary and you look at the subnational governments, what is happening is those are two institutions that are sort of flexing their muscles and saying they are independent. Those institutions that are flexing their muscles and saying they are independent, that's what the county governments are saying. They are saying that in a broad sense, we are independent, we know what we are doing. And the constitution is clear that there is a level of independence that we have. And the judiciary has now flexed its muscles. It's saying it is independent. And so when that language starts coming in, those two institutions have a very, very serious problem at the moment.
May I contextualize as well, going with a political angle, and say that in the context of Kenyan politics, the biggest brother is the president. And those at the national level. And we can count them, they're about 5 or 6. And that everybody else is basically aligned to one of the 6. Whether it's a governor, an MP, an MCA, is basically looking at, you will draw a line taking them to Uhuru Kenyatta, to Raila Odinga, to Kalonzo Musyoka, to Musalia Mudavadi and the others. It's the same thing that I want to put to you, that even as you try and, exert your own independence and all, you're still feeling that I owe my position to Raila, to Uhuru. So I will not really argue if Uhuru says this is the direction we are going. I sort of have to recoil and just sit back.
Toward the party line?
Yeah.
You could be true, about 50 or 60% true, that depending on the party line, it probably would also muzzle you in a sense that if you have something that you probably are in the party line that is aligned to the presidency, then you would be slightly more careful. I think, to be fair, I can argue here, but to be fair, politics is politics. They say politics is about interest. They say politics is the art of the possible. They say a lot of things about politics. But you must give it to the governors that have been there over the last 10 years. We've fought for our space. We've tried our best. And I think now devolution is a reality. It has its problems, a few of the problems that we are talking about, that these are man-made problems that can be resolved. And that's why I told you that depending on who becomes president after 2022, if you get somebody who is pro-devolution, and I don't want to tell you who it is because I probably will tell you my own choice. You get somebody who is pro-devolution, you can be sure that this country will go very far. So what we will then need to put in place is to put in place measures that ensure that devolution is properly implemented. Yeah.
There's a question that CT would like to ask you, and I'll ask it on his behalf.
Please go ahead.
And this is on own source revenue. Because all the time we're talking about money coming from the National Treasury, and we always ask ourselves, but counties also have a way and mechanisms of raising their own revenue. What do you respond to that? Have we seen an improvement in own source revenue modalities from counties in the last 8 years?
I'll give you an example. If you're looking at own source revenue, you are looking at probably, let's start with where most counties would get the bulk of the money. You're looking at land rates. You look at land rates, it's only those counties that have high levels of urbanization that would actually get the bulk of the money. If you are looking now, you look at Kiambu, look at Nakuru, look at Mombasa, look at Kisumu, those with high levels of urbanization. Those are the ones because the other bulk of the land is rural land. So you can't go and start putting land rates on our brothers and sisters at the local level. Then the second level is you going to markets. You taxing mama mboga. You taxing border. What are you actually talking about? These are people who are living from hand to mouth. So how much are you taxing them? In my own case, you are looking at, and we discussed with the border people and agreed on a quantum, an annual quantum, probably about, I can't remember, it should be either 300 or 400 shillings per annum. I mean, what are you talking about? How much money are you going to collect that would actually get you to the levels that you are talking about? So that's why I'm saying that if you are looking at counties, for instance, you go to Machakos County. Machakos County starts from almost from here where we are sitting, 2 kilometers from here, you're into Machakos County. So the whole of Earth River, you are going all that way. You're dealing with very, very major industrial developments and so on. So there is a problem with own source revenue. Yes, those counties that have resources, you're going to Narok, they are probably getting resources from the national park, from those national parks and so on. Those would raise quite a lot of revenue. So I would tell you, yes, you can improve on revenue, but unless the revenue sources are changed, it's very, very difficult for county governments. There are some that are advantaged, there are some that are disadvantaged.
You see, the yardstick I would think of, to add on to the question that I asked you through Eric, is this. There were councils before counties, and there are clear records of the revenue collections within the councils. Now, I have it on authority that there are counties, I will not mention counties, that were started collecting less than the councils were actually collecting when the councils were in force. And then there was talk of automation because that was supposed to be the magic bullet or the magic wand that would now, silver bullet, magic wand, yes, that would now guarantee that the revenue would be collected adequately. I agree with you. You cannot compare Kisii and Mombasa. You cannot compare Nyamira and Kisumu. You cannot. But you can compare what they have done in the past and what they are doing now. So my question would be, have we seen a significant rise in own source revenue collection in the counties since they took over the councils, from the function of the councils rather?
Yes and no. In some counties, there has been an exponential increase. In some other counties, no. And it probably also has to do with the whole broader issue of enforcement. The local government at that time was part of national government. So even enforcement, national government was involved in ensuring that there was proper enforcement in revenue collection. The problem that that county governments have got is a broader issue of enforcement. There is a big problem of enforcement. we are trying to put in county courts and other things to see how best this can help us. So our biggest problem is actually enforcement, not anything else.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room then, healthcare. Provision of healthcare is a devolved function. Counties are in charge of personnel in the health service. And since 2013, we have seen strike upon strike by healthcare workers from all cadres, be it nurses, clinical officers, doctors. And then also, we have seen some development in terms of, establishment of some structures. And then the question has been, those structures have been put in place, and we call them hospitals. Do they have adequate staff? Do they have the requisite equipment? Why is healthcare such a hot potato for counties to manage?
Thank you very much, Eric. And it's nice you brought in healthcare because at the period of the strikes, I was the chair of human resources, labor and human resources in the Council of Governors before I gave it up and became the vice chair. Let's start with the developments before we come to the negativities. From the time that we took over, health services has completely and absolutely improved in all the counties. And I'll tell you why. If you look at all the counties, what we found on the ground, first of all, the budgets in the counties, like in my own case, Kisii County, I think about 45% of my budget is going to health services, which means that I'm crowding out agriculture, I'm crowding out roads, I'm crowding out urban development, I'm crowding out youth programs, I'm crowding out water, I'm crowding out quite a lot of issues to ensure that I put health services on a good map, because with a healthy population, then you can actually have people that are vibrant, that are able to survive on their own. And that 45% for me, and let me give my example because I'm sitting here right now. If by the time that I went to Kisii, there were only 2 specialists. Now I have over 40 specialists in the various areas of medical specialization, whether you're looking at oncology, whether you're looking at pediatrics, whether you're looking at general physicians and so on. I have over 40 specialists. I have employed, there were only about 16 doctors. I have over 170 doctors. I have sent for postgraduate training for them to be specialists, 67 officers, medical officers. So in the next 1 or 2 years, I'll be having close to 70 or 80 medical specialists there. Now, the bed capacity was about 400 when I came in. The bed capacity at the moment is 900. I'm putting up a mother child, which is almost complete, a 350 bed capacity that is going to take care of only mothers and children. It's a big capacity with about 3 lifts. A very big, major, humongous capacity thing that we're putting up. There was no mortuary to talk about. I have a 100 body mortuary with the best cooling facilities probably in Western Kenya, which rivals any like Lee Funeral Home, and you can take that to the bank. What I'm saying is the truth. So we have those facilities at the local level. We are putting facilities at the sub-counties, and that happens for all the... Go to Kakamega and see the type of facilities that they're putting there. So in health services, cumulatively, we have increased the number of health workers. We have increased the number of facilities. We are offering close to 60% of health services are being offered by the facilities that we have at the local level. Of course, the others got private facilities, faith-based facilities, and non-governmental facilities. They also offer services in a broad context. So basically what I'm saying is you go to counties, there are cases of counties in northeastern that had not done surgeries, certain specific surgeries that where you're seeing surgeries now. So we employed very many doctors. On the paramedical staff, whether you're dealing about nurses, whether you're dealing with clinical officers, you are dealing with all these officers. There are 17 paramedical specializations. We have also increased staffing. In my own case, I increased the number of nurses by almost between 800 and 1,000. So this has happened. So in health services, just to show you what, there is no county that is giving less than 30% of its budget to health. Not even one single. You go and check, you can call me back if I'm saying a lie. There isn't even one county. For me, I told you I'm giving over 44% of my budget to health services. I mean, I'm aware that I'm crowding out these other services, but so be it.
Because this is important.
Because health is important. A healthy nation is a productive nation.
So why is it that you think, Governor, the loudest noise that comes from the counties is still on the provision of healthcare?
Is it, do we really have noise on the provision of healthcare, or do we have problems with health workers?
You see, when health workers are not at work, it's about provision of healthcare.
Is that about, then, but you also asked a question about the health workers. The health workers, when we came in, we went into negotiations. They demanded more money. And I can tell you that for the last 10 years, I think their salary has doubled. And that you can also take to the bank is a fact. I think that the prior years when they were a bit worried about devolution, I think the health workers have passed that. They were a bit unclear about devolution. They were a bit worried about devolution. But I think that has settled in. We have reached a stage when I think we are stabilizing not only in the health sector, but the entire labor relations in county governments. I think is becoming stable. And you'd want to see a situation where you are sitting on the table with the workers, where they actually don't go on strike. You sit on the table with them, you negotiate, and they also accept the realities of the country that they are living in, that you, even in your own house, you can't go and buy meat if you actually don't have money. You have to agree with your wife that we have no money. We have to find a way out. You have to take a mboga. The best way is, if you want your proteins, you probably go and buy 1 or 2 eggs, and that you will have spent about, I don't know how much an egg costs. Is it? I don't know whether it's 10 shillings. So you can spend 20 shillings and have your 2 or 3 eggs, and you would have given your family some protein. So these are issues that even those who are working in public utilities need to understand that public resources are not infinite.
There's something that I would like to ask, Your Excellency. We look at the time that we're in, and there is the future. What brought this to my mind is the recent election in Zambia, where this gentleman has tried 6 times before he actually became president. Okay? That was his goal. He's now 59. He's now president. He has got years ahead of him. You have 2 terms. What becomes of you?
When I look at you, my brother Muga,
Yes.
I think that you have had a good life. And you have transited very many positions before you sat here. From the way I'm listening to you and the way you are talking, you're fairly experienced in a number of areas. I worked in government, and you actually said rightly that some of us grew up. I joined government as a management analyst and grew up management analyst 1, senior management analyst, chief management analyst in government, deputy secretary in government, program director, Kenya Civil Service Reform Program. I became a PS. I was in charge of teachers at one time as a CEO of the Teacher Service Commission. I mean, I've been around. So since I've been around, contextually, I never planned any of those things. I think I would see the hand of the Almighty in all that was happening. And even they even say, even in leadership, really it's God who gives leaders. So why don't we leave it to God to determine our destiny?
Okay, this is the direction that was going.
Has been in my place. Stop playing God's
Role.
Yeah.
Let God do his role and you do yours.
Yeah.
I humbly accept.
Kubali. It is
Yeah.
God's. It's God's work.
Yes.
Your Excellency, Governor, we thank you very much for joining us today and the conversation that we've had. As we conclude this conversation, there are those that are listening to you and they've been sending messages from Kisii County.
But
saying,
we have not talked about devolution.
yes, and that's why I want us to conclude with the Devolution conference coming in next week. There are those that are, will be asking themselves, so what's the purpose of having a Devolution conference? What are we looking at with the Devolution conference? What should we be expecting to come out of such a conference? What would you say?
Thank you very much. The questions that you're asking, the issues that you are raising, it is very good to share experiences. Devolution conferences bring together all the stakeholders, the entire devolution family. It brings together national government because the president is going to be there. You will have all the 47 county governors. You will have all the 47 county assemblers, including their speakers. You will have the Senate. You will have the development partners. You will have civil society. And you basically are going to have everybody there. And they are all going to talk about devolution. They are going to share experiences. We're going to talk about areas where we need to improve. And this, when you see those annual conferences, and they don't only occur in this country, they're occurring everywhere. In the US, the governors have their normal annual conferences. All the governors in the US, they normally have, in fact, I think it's biannual, 2 times a year. I suspect that's the way it happens. So for us, these conferences have happened. We are going into the 7th annual devolution conference, and it's the last annual devolution conference. We are going to have biannual conferences. We are thinking that 1 year is too short to share experiences. We are thinking that the next conference now is going to be every 2 years. That will give enough period in which to assess, especially the deliberations and the recommendations of the earlier conferences. This year's conference is going to be in Makueni, in Wote municipality, in Makueni County, and the theme of this conference is the main theme is multi-level governance for climate action. The sub-theme is subnational mobilization in unlocking the full potential of climate action during and after pandemics. Now, we thought about 2 things. First, I think we had the foresight because we thought that, especially with the carbon emissions and so on, the world is seeing unprecedented climate changes. This country is a case in point where you are actually starting to have a mini type of winter. And I can see the type of clothes you people are putting on. So we decided that this should be the
theme for this year.
The theme for this year. But after pandemics, we were also well aware that we have the current pandemic that we have. How do we relate this theme of climate action to pandemics? Because if you are looking at climate, you are also looking at a country that is basically agricultural. Kenya is an agricultural country.
Governor, we have a lot to talk about, in fact, with the Devolution conference as well. Let's go into the news. Time is up. Asante sana for joining us today.
Thank
we
you.
really appreciate you coming.
Thank
and
you.
also to our audience on KTN Home who've been watching the top of the hour.